throughout my life, hope, which is my social compass, is I want to work so that I can connect with people and that I can learn from people. And possibly I can also share what I have experienced. But the main thing from being a teacher all the way to being a therapist is when another teacher would say, oh, I want to tell you about this student. This student is me. I said, no, don't tell me anything. Let me discover who this student is.
Welcome to the Career Safari podcast, our space to have candid conversations with women from around the world about their unique career journeys, because there are women everywhere carrying the torch for us so we can boldly be on our own path. And I'm your host and founder of Career Safari, Wamita. Okay, this much torchbearer, everyone. This month's torchbearer came to me highly recommended by a few people that I really have grown to care for. And as soon as we had our first chat, I just thought, oh, this conversation is going to really help somebody, even if it's just me. But this much torchbearer was a teacher in Brazil for 20 years, teaching American history and literature. And now she is a therapist, counselor, and coach. Some of the methods that she practices includes Reiki and emotional freedom technique, or EFT. But there are a number of other healing methods that she has studied and healers that she has studied as well. And she's a mother of two. She's a Brazilian American, and she was truly raised around the world. I'm so honored to present to you the journey of Susan De Toledo Hulley. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you for being here and inviting me. That was a very nice introduction.
Oh, it's true. It's true. I mean, I caught some idea of what you're doing and how you're helping people. And I'm like, this is a story that I know I want to share. And like I said, just from the little bit that I've talked to you about and researched you on, I mean, I'm truly excited. And I think the best place for us to start is, what have you decided to name your career safari? What's the name of your journey?
Well, since my journey has so many different paths, but they all tie together with the story, the title that I'm going to give it. And the title is Hope, My Social Compass.
Hope, My Social Compass.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that one in.
Yeah.
Hope, My Social Compass. Why did you pick that? Let's start there.
Let's start over there with hope. Hope is a word that has been popping in all around me. For example, I just finished reading the book of Edith Eger, and then I started reading The Gift, the 12 Lessons to Save Your Life. I also was reading another book that I highly recommend, but I heard it in audio and I bought the book. And imagine Jane Goodall.
I've heard of Jane Goodall, yeah.
Oh, it started with chimpanzees and animals, and now she's a naturalist and she's fighting for the future of humanity and the planet. And her book is all about the book of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And the explanation, I also saw hope in Viktor Frankl's In Search of Meaning. And they say that hope is the boldest act of imagination that you can have. Hope is the boldest act of imagination that one can have.
I have gotten to this debate with someone before about hope, which is why I'm here smiling, because we got into that argument. If a person doesn't have hope, what do they have?
Exactly. And the hope is, it would be like the opposite of discouragement, of pessimism, and hope is not optimism. Hope is not born from optimism. It's born from possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That things, like there's for good, there's for bad. But for good means that you are a higher human being. You are working on yourself. And you are looking at a person and seeing possibilities. So I told a client the other day, I said, just think of yourself as a rock, that inside there is a diamond. And we're all chiseling away to find that diamond. Or like Thich Nhat Hanh said, the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist who just passed, human beings are like the waves. And one wave looks at another wave and says, oh, I'm more beautiful, or my race is better, or I feel inferior to you, but they all come from the same ocean. And it's fear. Oh, we're going towards the shore. What happens once we reach it? I'm afraid. Where do I go when this ends? You go back to the source. So throughout my life, hope, which is my social compass, is I want to work so that I can connect with people and that I can learn from people. And possibly I can also share what I have experienced. But the main thing, from being a teacher all the way to being a therapist, is when another teacher would say, oh, I want to tell you about this student. This student is me. I said, no, don't tell me anything. Let me discover who this student is. Let me see the potential, you know? And that's the way with when a person comes in therapy and feels a little lost, or there's always hope.
So how have you, and you talked a little bit about it, but just I want to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah.
How have you seen hope being your compass played out in your life?
Well, you know how some people say, oh, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to accept that job because it may not work out, or it doesn't seem right. But what I've always had with hope is the following. When things all of a sudden open up and I see that the doors are opening and it seems like an invitation, I say, well, I hope this will work, but I'm going to try it. And if it doesn't work, it's not a failure. It's just one more thing that I have tried. So a lot of what happened to me throughout my life was hope. And I would say it starts as a child. Like I told you, all this moving around, changing schools, having to meet different people since young, always having to go into new schools. I counted 11 schools. So, I mean, if you don't have hope to make friends, to meet people, to adapt, there, you know, you got to learn how to do these things. And then after a while, people don't scare you. And I think that's it. People don't scare you. Of course, I have a thing that helped me a lot in this life. I have a twin.
Your sister. Yes.
Yeah. And we're identical. So always together and sharing, talking, processing, working things out.
She's like your other compass, or she's one of the dials.
And right now we're exactly, I'm on north of the compass and she's south. She's in Brazil and I'm in the States.
I want to now, I want to go back to that hope thing. And at the end, I went to Career Safari social media and asked people if they have questions for you. And I've got some pretty powerful questions. So I think we're going to get back to hope and cultivating hope.
Okay.
There is a lot of social disruption happening in the past few years, and we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing, thought leaders, I would say, are saying that millennials and Gen Z people are just not putting up with it. They're not putting up with how the world and our communities are being cared for. And at the same time, causing disruption is nothing new. It will always be needed, in my opinion. There will always be a need to rebalance power dynamics and to speak up for those who have suffered that might not have a voice or might not have as loud of a voice as the average person or the average demographic, or some of our more powerful demographics, I should say. And for you, you have a social justice background. You talk to, I kind of see you as a social justice warrior, for lack of a better word. Can you talk more about what it was like protesting the Vietnam War and other moments?
Okay. When I went to college in the States. I came from Brazil, right? Already in Brazil, I was already kind of protesting, right? But we had a military regime and I was still kind of young. When I went to college, it hurt me to see all the problems, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and then Robert Kennedy. I saw that one live on television because he was going through the back of the Chinese, I think a Chinese restaurant or something.
Or a hotel or something like that.
Or a hotel, yeah. And I remember him going down and it hurt me, okay, to see that these things were happening. So I went to University of Miami and I told you that I signed up for an African-American literature and history course. I was the only white person in the classroom. And it was, I remember, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7:30 to 9. And I was very pleased. There were people who were Black Panthers at the time in the classroom. And there were people who, well, on different types of levels of, right? And I was shocked because I got phone calls at night that I was like an Oreo cookie, black on the inside, white on the outside. Yeah.
Oh. And this would be from phone calls from who?
I don't know. It was people on, it's the South.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, but in the vast majority, I made excellent friends in the classroom. And to my unhappiness, they told me, you're not going to see a change in decades. This is going to take decades to heal. So that made me kind of sad. I protested against Vietnam, right? But in a way where I never try to be forceful or angry or mean. I don't want to go down the line that we see today, polarization. That does not open a dialogue. So I would talk but of course I was a little disappointed in everything that was happening. I remember then there was Candace Bergen was there, Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, the really good looking one that played his name.
Robert Redford?
No. The other one, the
Marlon Brando?
No. This is the guy that played the movie Reds.
I don't know that.
Yeah, anyhow, it'll come back to me.
My age is hitting me now.
Yeah. No, and so I there was the whole bit, the tear gas and on. When I went back to Brazil, we were under a military regime. And I remember that at the time, everybody in the classroom would call each other compañero, companion, because if you said your name out loud, there were spies on the other side. And I remember that there was a very famous journalist, Vladimir Herzog, And they said he was Jewish and he was against the military regime. He worked for the newspaper, the state of Sao Paulo, and they said that he hung himself in jail. Hung himself. He was assassinated. So we were planning a protest outside on the streets, everybody. And I was being followed with my twin sister home that night. And so I didn't go back to college for a couple of days because I was really afraid. Then when I became a teacher at Graded, I started working with indigenous tribes. I worked with the Kuikuru from the Xingu, and then I worked with the Xavante, and I made 2 trips to the Xavante and Mato Grosso, and taking things that they needed, doing bake sales and running and pledges for money and all for them to get walkie-talkies and all, to be able to ask for the Indian Funai, which would be the Indian affairs, to come and get, sometimes they don't have the herbs and the medicine to save the children, and also to have a little boat to go up and down the river because of the pollution. And I also invited the chiefs to come to the school to talk to the students about what was happening in the Xingu and the Amazon and all. And I'll never forget how they cried in front of the students because their life would cease to exist. Totally. I don't know if you can see, but this is a fukaka.
I can see. Maybe pull it up just a little bit more to the camera. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. And this is one of the chiefs of the Kuikuru. And what's so interesting is they had very low cases of COVID because they were extremely organized and taking it all very seriously. So it came out on several articles that Fukaka and Jakalu were very good. And at the Xavante, I took my son there. He was 17 with a camera, and we went because in that area, you've got Carjo and all these people that tear down it's like a savanna to plant soy. And so they're taking away the type of life that they can live. And so I went there with my son. They met us in a little Volkswagen, and we went to the reservation, and I learned a lot there. And my son did a film about it. It's just horrible. I won't even say what they did to the indigenous chief, one of the chiefs there. But anyhow, it started, and then the year after, I took a group of seniors, and we went there, and it was just fabulous. My son went again, and they did festivities. Greenpeace was there, and so there is a lot of that in my life, you know.
Where do you think that fight came from? Because that's not typical, even though it might seem that way, but standing up for others, trying to educate yourself on other people's pains and plights, and then trying to actually stand in the gap, that's all very unique traits about you. Where do you think that came from?
It's difficult to say. I think it's a bit of compassion, empathy, mirroring cells in the brain. I remember that once my sister and I were twins, right? And we were living in Rio, and we were probably about 7 years old. And we didn't want to go to the open market. It was, I didn't like seeing all the chickens and being sold to later take them home. In those days, you didn't have packaged chickens there. But there was one, and my mom would make me carry the toilet paper home. I thought that was kind of humiliating, you know? And so we started asking for coins. And we collected the coins. And one day we said, we want to go to the market. We called it the Feta. And my mom said, what's in their heads? We went and we gave the coins to two twins that were crippled. And we're asking for money. So that was the only reason I wanted to go. So sometimes what happens, I think, is that if you're a sensitive child, my father was always kind of a socialist. Also, my grandmother, my Brazilian grandmother, started one of the first movements, feminist movements in Rio. So maybe it's genetic. I don't know.
So were those conversations happening as you were growing up about the state of, Brazil or the community? Were you around that then? If that's what they were doing?
I think it was more their actions. I observed it. I overheard. I know that when I spoke against Vietnam, my father listened, and then he told his boss in the States, this is wrong. And they said, Frank, are you communist? And he said, no, I'm listening to my daughters.
Oof. Yeah.
So, I could see that, we have to talk. We have to listen to each other.
Did you ever feel unsafe? Because you talked about how in the South you were getting, anonymous, what I would say threatening phone calls. You talked about in Brazil when you were protesting, I'm assuming it's the government at that point was following you. People were listening and all this happening, espionage. Were you scared?
I was more scared in Brazil.
Okay.
Not in the States, because that's happening, but nobody's going to take you and put you in prison. And torture you. And then at that time in Brazil, it's what they called the pau de arara. I have friends, people I know, who would be hanging on a pole. No, it was horrible. And that was happening in Chile, and that was happening in Argentina.
I have to pause there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
These were the missing. And then I taught English to, my sister and I taught at alumni to a group of women who wanted to learn English. And the conversation started there where many of them, their sons were missing, their daughters were missing. One of my closest friends in Brazil had to flee to France.
Yeah. Yeah. That is truly traumatizing. But you didn't stop.
No. I didn't stop. And when it's so funny, some people can be so judgmental, So I was walking through school once near the teacher's cafeteria, taking the indigenous chiefs to have lunch with me. And one of them said, look at her. What does she think? And I thought like this, I'm not going to listen.
You have no idea.
Yeah. I even found something that I thought was so beautiful that I wanted to share.
Please.
Yeah. Let me see if I find it, because there's a couple of things that I thought. I found this. This from Dr. Edith Egger, the one who at 16 was put in a concentration camp, lost her mother. And this is a book that's really worth listening to. And she says, our best teachers. She goes, the most toxic, obnoxious people in our lives can be our best teachers. The next time you're in the presence of someone who irks or offends you, soften your eyes. Tell yourself, human, no more, no less. Human like me. And then ask, what are you here to teach me?
There's going to be a lot of pausing. That's, I think,
Yeah.
going to happen this episode, because that is, honestly, I'm still stuck on seeing your friends and classmates being hung. And then, to be, trying to help a community out. And this is honestly a real thing, when you're trying to help a community out, there is a sense of mistrust and resistance that can happen. And, shout out to all of my community building people, development people, NGO people. But there are times when you try to go into a community as an outsider and there's resistance and there's mistrust. People have done this before. Who are you? You don't know our pain. You come from there, you look like this. And there's a lot of that needs to happen. So you have to end up building trust. And you can get frustrated, and that's a human feeling, but to then do exactly what your quote says, that's a hard skill to learn. That's a hard skill.
It's very hard. It's very hard. You have to fall down a couple of times to learn it. And you have to really exercise non-judgment, because everybody has been through a walk in life.
Yeah.
That takes them to where they are. It's so incredible, because I have my grandchildren. And so one of them is very young that I'm observing. He smiles and he loves. So we are born to love. Someone taught us to hate.
Yeah.
Or circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's has happened in the world, continues happening.
Mm.
But somewhere along the line, and I feel honored that I was able to be in the classroom with so many children and to be able to work with them and make them see what we do with each other,
And I want to spend a little bit of time on that as well. But first, like I mentioned, you truly lived all around the world. You spoke about United States, Brazil, Italy.
That's
and I know
all.
you're in okay, well, that's more than most. And 3 completely different cultures.
Yes.
And then if you move around those countries, there are different cultures within it. But what made you call Brazil your permanent home for so many years?
Okay. First of all, when people ask me, what are you? I say, I'm a mongrel. And they go, what do you mean a mongrel? I say, my mom's Brazilian. My dad's American. So I was born up in 2 cultures.
Yeah.
And these 2 cultures have given me so much. And I'm very thankful to getting the best of one and the best of the other and trying to incorporate it in my being, And Brazil became my home because I started doing a lot of work there. When I got married, obviously, and my marriage did not work, I did not leave the city or the country where the father was, even though he didn't visit much, the kids, but at least there's a law that you can't remove the children from one of the parents. So I ended up staying, and then I got a job in the American school, and it was a good job. And I had my health plan and my salary at the end of the month, so it was guaranteed. And I wrote some children's books, have 7 books published in Brazil. And then I stayed, and then I decided now to move. And that was just out of the opportunity, the hope, and the desire to be in the States now. I just felt it was the moment to make that big jump.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you worked in that school in Brazil for 20 years, correct?
Yes, correct.
So now the trend is more to move around to different places of employment. So did that ever cross your mind to say, you know what, I mean, I can work at a job for a year. I mean, a year, and I'm like, maybe it's time for me to go. So, any of that cross your mind, or or not?
Well, I think I had told you beforehand that my kids had already graduated. They were in college. And I was still working at this school, but it was a feeling that I thought, oh my goodness, it's time to start something new. I'm at the end of, I was about 50 some, and I thought it's time to make a change. I've already taken all these courses in healing modalities, and maybe it's time to try something new and stay for security. I don't know. Maybe I want to take a strike at doing something different in my life. I always thought about what Clint Eastwood says. How do you continue producing and directing a movie at 90 some? He says, I wake up in the morning, I don't let the old man in. So I said,
Back off.
I won't let the old man in. So I said, oh, you know, I'm going to continue. I've got vitality, and I'm going to try something different. There's a calling. There's like a calling. And you can reinvent yourself at any age. So I was driving to school, and I remember it was December, and I was in front of this shopping mall that I was driving by. I remember the light, and I was listening to, on my CD player in the car, Carolyn Mace. Mm-hmm. And she was saying, and you who've been working at a school for so long and you're afraid to lose your medical plan and all. I said, oh my God, she's talking to me.
I mean, she might as well have called your name. Did she call your name?
And I told Vivian, listen to this. And so I gave in my resignation in December, and I left in June.
Wow.
2008.
Wow. So, I mean, God, in my spiritual belief system, God came down and was like, here, you need a nudge. That's
it. There you go. That's it, right? Wake up. Well, there's time. Try something new. That's what keeps you, young, enthusiastic, and motivated, and don't be afraid.
So how hard was it for you to walk away?
It's weird because you remember every locker that your kids put their books in, all my good friends, the teachers that were there. But at the same time, I wasn't really eye to eye on the curriculum anymore. Mm. I thought it was a lot of show. They said they were inclusive, and I wasn't too sure this was inclusion anymore. For example, the type of teacher that I was before they told me that one kid was very slow that came to 5th grade. And I said, no, this guy's very bright. He just does not put pen on paper that fast. And so I did something. I called my assistant and I wrote his tests as he dictated to me. They didn't have the computers with dictation at that time. Well, the guy was brilliant. Mm. My hands hurt at the end of his dictation. He remembered everything like a recorder. Well, he went to Harvard and he graduated, and his mom, until today, I meet her at the same ophthalmologist, and she tells me, thank you for believing in him. Because after I showed what he could do all through high school, he was a champion.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the computers came in with the voice thing and all. He did very well. So I left, and I started our own therapy, right? And we called it Twin Flames because it's twins. And we both had the same idea. And we started with Reiki and massage and shiatsu and flower essences.
What's that?
That is based on Bach essences, California essences, Alaskan essences. With Sabina Petit, it's in the Pacific Coast essences. And these are based on that flowers, plants, and gems. You can make formulas that help people during different periods of whatever they're going through. One of the most famous is the rescue remedy of Bach. And when people go through trauma or anything, the rescue remedy helps so that they can deal with it. So we started like this, very low profile, and we started getting our clients slowly, but there were times that we were getting antsy because the agenda was not that full. And so we decided every day, and this I would highly recommend, if you're starting something and it's slow at starting, you have to dedicate to your profession or what you're starting every day a couple of minutes. Somebody didn't show up, they canceled. Open up, plan something, write an article, study a bit more, but have things around you so that you are, refueling your dream and investing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we did.
So we talked about a couple of the types of, I guess, I don't know if it was the best word, techniques, practices, modalities, I think is what you also said. So, and I listed a few. So Reiki, what are some of the other ones?
Reiki, magnified healing. I also did the biodynamic cranial sacral therapy, which I never really practiced a whole lot. I got the whole, I studied everything, but then I went into some other modalities that people were calling more for. We also did for bamboo massage that we learned with a guy from Germany. And we would then do sound therapy, which we have all the crystal bowls and the ones that I brought from India, from the Himalayas. And that really helped, sound therapy, tuning forks.
Yeah.
And then I still felt that something was missing. And one of the ideas that you told me, did ever feel like I got to a point where I was a little stuck, right? So it's so funny because I'm a translator as well, thanks to Portuguese and English, right? Which took me to India and translating for a group of yoga and Ayurvedic medicine. And so that was wonderful. I felt really at home up in the mountains. And one of the people there turned to me and said, one of the organizers, he's a sensitive person. He said, why aren't you doing EFT? I see you doing EFT. EFT. And so I went to visit my daughter in Media, Pennsylvania, and my sister wrote me and said, listen, there is a EFT master in that little town in Pennsylvania. That's why I say, keep your eyes open. And I said, no kidding. Let me just pull something out. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And I said, who? She said, Karen Davidson.
How? Nothing to me is random, but.
No, this is amazing. Listen to this then. So I called her up. She was 3 blocks away, walking. I had no car. My daughter had no car. She had just moved to the States. It was winter. So I said, is this Karen Davidson? This is Susan Hulley. I really want to study with you. He says, my next course is in March in Philadelphia. I says, oh, what a pity I can't make it. I'm going back to Brazil. So maybe next time, hung up, calls me right back. I found one more person. I'm going to teach you in my house. So I went there. She taught me in her house, and I did EFT 1. And on my way out, I went like this. Oh gosh. I said, I'm going to take you to Brazil. You're going to teach there and I'm going to translate for you. The year after, I brought her to Brazil. She taught EFT. I translated, and I translated with a friend of mine, the PowerPoints, everything, the manual. I learned a lot. Then she called me and she says, I want to give you matrix reimprinting. Now, matrix reimprinting is, it stems from EFT. It's amazing. It was created by Carl Dawson. And I think I have the book. Well, it doesn't matter. If you want, I'll bring it down. It's right here. These are the books I brought with me.
Rewrite your past. Okay. You have to explain what EFT is, but I want you to I want you to finish this.
I'll complete this.
Yeah.
And so she offered the course. I just paid for my ticket to Seattle and I paid for the hotel. And I took the course, and later on I took her to Brazil. We did EFT 1, EFT 2 again, matrix reimprinting, and then she says, you're ready to teach. And I found myself, that's where I really blossomed in the therapies.
And this is post your years of teaching at the school.
Yes. And this is after the Reiki and the tuning forks. I continued doing that, but I found my niche. And my sister does the flower essences and we combine them. So what is emotional freedom technique? It's the idea, and later on I did other techniques that I'll tell you about. It's that the body holds the score, right? We were talking about everything is there.
Powerful. Yep.
Powerful. So we have meridian points, and I explained this in the course, and we go through a lot of the work. If you just say positive, I don't feel this, or I'm free of this, I'm free of this, in your frontal cortex, you think you're free of it. But in your limbic system, your subconscious, you're not free. It's there. It's imprinted. It's in your file cabinet. Whatever trauma, whatever happened to you, it's there. And if you don't acknowledge it, it will stay. You can't fool yourself. Name it to tame it, right? They say. So, or whatever you resist persists. That's the other one.
Name.
Right?
Okay.
So with EFT, there is a long time ago, Roger Callahan with TFT, thought field therapy. There was a woman who was phobic with water. And he was a psychoanalyst, psychologist, and he couldn't get her to calm down. So she said, oh, my stomach's hurting. It's going to rain and I'm afraid to go home. So he said, I know a little bit of acupuncture now. Go to your stomach area and start tapping. And so she started tapping. And just connect with your stomach and how it's making you feel. Well, she turned to him and says, it's gone. So he said, uh-oh, maybe there's something there. So he devised all these algorithms of different positions. It's almost like, you've got a secret code for different, if you're feeling trauma or frustrated or whatever, all the emotions. And then Gary Craig came along and said, but for you to learn all these different steps for different feelings and emotions, let's just go through all the meridian points. So the idea is the following. When you have a shock, a trauma, an accident, ridiculed, bullied, you have this stored in your body. And the energetic system, when you're healthy and you feel well, the energy flows. And it's like you got the hose. And when the hose is a little twisted, you feel some pain, you feel discomfort, you go, I don't feel quite myself. Do you feel yourself? No, I don't feel like myself. It's because something is disrupted. And you are a whole person. You're the mind, you're the energy, you're the feelings, and you've got the gut. And the big buzzword now is the polyvagal system. It's an up and down process where you learn how to calm yourself, because your body can race, the heart can race when you feel threatened. And so when you're tapping, you're already calming down. But there's something that's very interesting in EFT.
I'm trying it over here. Okay.
When you tap here, you tell yourself what's bothering you. And so you go like this. You're not going to re-traumatize yourself. You're not going to make it stronger, because you're saying, even though I'm feeling very, let's say, very frustrated because so-and-so did not call back, and I was expecting that phone call, and he or she promised that they would do it, and I'm feeling down and insecure and frustrated, even though this is how I'm feeling, I accept myself. The minute you say, I accept myself, if a client can say, I want to accept myself, and if you say, and I deeply and completely love myself, or I want to deeply and completely love myself, what happens here? The word, I accept myself, comes down a center in the limbic system, which is the amygdala. It's like a camera, an alert camera, and it calms down. And I've always noticed in the tapping, when the client says, and I accept myself, oh, they're releasing.
Wow.
Once I had a session with a young guy whose father died of AIDS in his arms.
Wow. Okay.
He was about 14, and he felt responsible that he couldn't save his father deep inside. And his tapping, he burped the whole time, but he was like this. And I could feel it, because this is a long process, but you get into the here and now, that you create a field with a person. There is empathy, there's a connection. And so I said, so-and-so, do you want to burp? I said, burp. So this tangling or whatever that's happening in the body, this releasing, it's releasing, comes in burps, lots of yawning. It comes out sometimes in boom, boom.
It's natural. It's natural.
It's natural. It's got to come out somewhere. It's things that you hold in, right?
Yeah.
And Gary Craig, who started talking about EFT and teaching it, and started training his master teachers, he said that one of his first clients finished the session and just was so tired, she had to stop when she was driving home. That as an alert, I had one person who had a lot of trauma, and he tapped, and we had to finish tapping standing up. And then I made him sit down, and I made him a cup of coffee at night. And I said, you're not leaving until you're ready. But it's so good. People have their first sleep. They relax. So
all of that was built up,
oh,
energy and stress. And, it's just like when you get a massage and they tell you to drink water and rest. Definitely.
And this, before I start a session, I say, do you have your water with you? And then you have them just feel their body after they've done some rounds. And then there are so much to the rounds that come with, like EMDR, where you're moving your eyes around.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Yes, scanning of the brain. So how does matrix reimprinting fit in? Carl Dawson was with a client on stage, and she was not improving. And you got the audience there, But she says like this, it's so funny. I see my little self.
Huh.
And he said, well, go there, introduce yourself, and help her. So matrix re-imprinting is you go through the EFT, you get yourself stabilized, and then you go into the period of what happened. And you introduce yourself to your little self, which is like a hologram.
Yeah.
And you go, I am you from the future. I've done this with lots of clients. It's amazing. And you go, and something's going to happen, and I want to be here for you.
Mm. Oof.
Yeah, because trauma is a Uden moment, okay? You feel alone, it's dramatic, it's isolating, and you don't have a strategy. It's unexpected, D, dramatic, I, isolating, and you have no strategy. But if somebody visits you from the future, which is yourself, and holds you and asks you what you want to do
And how you feel.
and how you feel, and gives you the courage to say what you wanted to say, and then you help the person to, as they feel better, to put their hands on their heart, close their eyes, do some deep breathing, because they've already released, they feel better. What color do you feel at this moment? That with this whole image of being able to do what you couldn't do back then. And the child will say, let's say I see pink. I can usually feel what they're going to say because the colors are according to what they went through. Then you say, I want to see that color. Is it dark? And you ask all the questions going through the top of your head and the top of the head of the little one, or whoever it is. And it starts spreading through all the inside your brain, all your cells, communicating that you're peaceful, that all is well right now. And you make it as intense as possible, going through all the body to the soles of the feet, and then all the way back to the heart area, and then it projects out and it surrounds you. These techniques later, that thing of feeling a calling, you know?
Yeah.
I went
Yeah.
online and I found Dr. Stephen Paul Adler, who was in Brazil, and he teaches Ericksonian hypnosis.
Uh-huh. We
And
haven't talked about this hypnosis yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So I called them and I says, do you need a translator? Says, yes, we're interviewing translators. So
This is happening a lot in your life.
yes, it's a lot. So that's why I start having hope all the time. There's hope that, you know, I'm not going to get discouraged. So I went there, and I think I was one of the last ones. And I saw one after another come out. Oh, I'm an official translator. I'm an official translator. I said, oh my God, what did I get into? Calm down. So there's a technique in EFT that you can do it without anybody noticing. And you just, if you can see here.
Yes. Like,
right? You take a deep breath and you're right at the cuticles, right at the
Okay.
cuticle, on the sides, where
Okay.
people tear at their nails when they're nervous,
Okay. Okay.
right? And you go through all of them doing some calm breathing. You go from one hand to the other until you feel that you are calm. And I did that. And I started to, don't think less of yourself. You're bilingual. You don't have the background as an official therapist, but you can do it. And you also work as a therapist, so maybe this is a plus. I went in. I told him exactly who I was. I'm not an official translator. However, I heard Portuguese and English since I remember, and I work with therapy. And they asked me, do you get triggered when somebody goes through trauma and releases? I said, no, I got the job.
Wow.
And so I got my all my schooling in hypnosis with them. And so that's one more thing that I was able to acquire. And then he said, would you translate Ann Weiser Cornell with focusing? So the translation helped me a lot because I was able to meet top people. I wouldn't always have the money to pay for all these courses. Some I paid for, but a lot I learned just by translating and being present and practicing.
So Career Safari, we uplift different narratives and ideas on what being a career woman means, because, you know, because those stories need a home and people are looking for inspiration. And I would say we also aim to enable people to be free, to try new ideas for their lives. And just with any part of someone's life journey, there comes a moment, at least in my opinion, where you should take a step back, reflect, and heal as you move forward. And maybe that should happen continuously. And, you know, these jobs, these careers, they can shake you up and they can take a lot out of you. So I'm curious if, you know, being that you do healing work, in regards to your career, did you need to do that for yourself at any point?
Oh, you're always, when you're with a client, they say that sometimes the client comes to you and is your mirror.
Ooh.
Yeah. Like if, you know, people that are going through different problems, sometimes it's pretty much your problem too, in a different degree. And there is something called borrowing benefits. So they say that in the EFT, if you feel, oh my God, that seems to be a little bit of what I'm going through, you just remember to get to it. You might jot it down, but just the fact that you say, okay, I'm tapping for the person, but I'm also tapping for myself. So when did Gary Craig discover this? He said on stage, he says, I'm going to work with this person. But I want, on stage, because he was teaching, right? And he says, but all of you who are in the audience, jot down something you want to work on. And you're going to then tap, see the SUDS level, which is your level of distress. Is it 0 to 10? And if it's 0, it doesn't exist anymore. If it's 10, it's horrible. You're really distressed, right? Put it down on paper and see if it lowers. Just tapping with so-and-so on the stage. But you know that your intention is to lower your SUDS.
Yeah.
I have had days where things have been troublesome in my family, okay? Things that have happened.
Yeah.
Treating my dad, he died in 2017, but he had Alzheimer, and treating until the end with a lot of problems, lots of problems with everything, you know, that was happening at the time. But I would tap. And I would always, when I would tap with a person who's going through something tough, at the end, I would say to them, I honor you for your courage, and I honor you for letting me take this journey with you, because I too am healing with you. And that is the truth. And if something, I try to listen to what might be irking or something, and I have to work on myself. And I also have a psychologist friend at the height of the problems. She's Gestalt, but I would go to her and say, do you mind if I tap with you? I mean, she doesn't know how to tap. Do you mind if I tap as I'm talking? And she said, absolutely not. So I would do her therapy, but I would also, at one point when I was just talking with her, I would tap. So you have all these points, and it really does help you calm down.
And if you're listening to this episode on a podcast app, I would say you can always log on to Career Safari's YouTube, and she's actually demonstrating where she's tapping. So if you're curious about what this tapping about, you can go to our YouTube page. And I was doing it with her a little bit. Then I'm like, wait, my issues might come up. Let me stop. Let me stop before I start pouring out my guts.
Yeah. But it's so funny because in EFT, it's a lot more complicated than what they show usually, right? For example, there was one week, I was never sexually abused, okay?
Mhm.
But there's one week or 2 weeks, that there were so many that came to me.
Wow.
Yeah. And you wouldn't believe it in Brazil also. Family members, and it's just awful. And I was translating for Dr. Stephen, and the girl that he was doing the hypnosis with was abused. But he wasn't really getting to the real issue, just the hypnosis and all. And I had, when you have this intuition, this feeling, I said, oh my goodness, there's going to be a couple of women triggered here. This is many stories here. Sure enough. And if I were able to tap with them, it would have helped. But one person did ask for help. So after I finished translating, I went to where I could meet with her in private, to a room, and we worked on it with EFT and matrix reimprinting, and it was gone. Today I work with her husband and her daughter, but it was gone. It took a long time. We were there, but you don't re-traumatize. Why? Because you start with first just tapping, and then you don't tap slowly. When something is very powerful, you tap quick. You just go. And then you might start with this thing. You don't even say this thing. And you might start here, this thing, but right here, right now, I'm okay.
Just
I'm
start
okay.
talking, basically.
Yeah, but you're tapping.
As you're tapping.
Yeah. But then you don't go into details yet. So you go, this thing. And the person already knows, but I say, look at me. Because the polyvagal theory, the person needs to feel connected. Don't close your eyes. Right here, right now, I'm okay. You do that 3 times, and then you only go this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, okay? This thing, this thing. And you just do it very slow, fast, but the words, then this thing that happened, then are you ready for a little bit more? You're always following. I always say I'm a seeing eye dog.
Okay.
The client is the one that dictates everything. This thing that happened. And the person tells me this thing that happened. Or you can tell the story. You give a title or the movie, and you just go from the time before a little bit, and you move slowly. And maybe in another session, you start again until there's no trigger. I've seen a guy just tell me the story after working hard. And some of the most powerful demonstrations are done in the courses where you're tapping with a person and everyone around you is tapping with that person in a circle.
Wow, I can imagine. It's like a drum circle.
Yes. And what happens? The person feels safe. You create a field of holding. That's just so powerful. And that's the possibility of healing. Tapping was taken to Rwanda. And I think it's Lori something, I don't remember her last name, for the genocide. the kids that survived the genocide.
Oh, you mean Rwanda? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. And working with tapping there, they did their first round. That morning, they did tapping. And then somebody said, lunch is served. And nobody got up. And she said, aren't you hungry? And they said like this, I'm feeling I'm in my body for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Shamans say that when you start to heal, it's almost like when something very strong happened to you, it's like parts of your soul dismembered and you're bringing them back together.
This work is so important. This work is so important.
They took this to Sandy Hook.
Yes, and yeah, where the elementary school mass shooting happened in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, and the older kids were the ones that were talking with the kids in Rwanda, and some of them even helping them to go to school there and to continue with their higher studies. So there was a healing for both sides.
So so let's talk about, like, as a healer and someone that, has spoken out against social injustice all your life, what advice do you have about how to take care of yourself? At the time of this recording in the United States, we're dealing with Roe versus Wade possibly being overturned, the war in Ukraine. A white supremacist just shot up a grocery store in a predominantly Black neighborhood. Yeah. I mean, the pain is deep. Pain is deep. And that's why I keep saying this is important work. And it exists in all countries. You mentioned Rwanda, you talked about your experience in Brazil. I mean, you can just Google protest and name the country. Pick any country and something will pop up. There'll be something to read about protests that are happening and people crying out for change and help. So how can we take care of ourselves?
Well, number one, we have to, there is what Jane Goodall calls eco-grief.
Ooh, yeah.
And so we have grief because of ecology, what's happening to the planet. I know that I have a lot of that grief I have to hold back. There is media trauma, what we're seeing on the media. So we have to be in touch with ourselves. We have to really be our own caretakers. Yeah. We have to know how far we can go, how much we can hear. And I really do think that if I could suggest a book.
Yes, please.
Yes, I would say, I heard the audio, and as I was washing dishes, because I do the cooking here and the cleaning at night, I was crying. But it's tears of saying, oh, thank you. Thank you for these words. Thank you for expressing what I feel. I think that the polarization today is so horrible. Yeah. And so much worse because of the media. And not that I say media is bad, but all these, you get away with murder by publishing things and that absolutely have no backing. There's, I mean,
no validity to it.
No validity, and very intelligent people who I know of
believe
it. And so it's mind-boggling. That's the most mind-boggling for me, is to see all this hatred, and there are people that I'm blocking. I can't until they do not try to convince me. There was one person I said, please don't. I don't think this way. I don't want to fight with you. He was trying to put down my throat, Bolsonaro, the president right now in Brazil, who's homophobic, who's against the vaccines, who is a Trump lover. And I mean, if you want to believe what you want to believe, that's fine, but don't do it to me.
If I've asked you to stop, just respect my boundary.
Respect it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I blocked him and he got outraged, but I told him, one more and I'm blocking you. And he did. So we have to find our limits. We have to unplug once in a while. We have to start meditating and we have to go into action. Sometimes being an activist can help you feel that you're doing something,
True.
Yeah, because if you feel that it's not just the word, but you can help. So for example, in Brazil, I have a friend who is a Black coach. But he was a famous basketball player here, in Brazil, and he was taking the course of hypnosis. That's where I met him. And we connected right away. And he wanted some type of discount because for him, he was getting off his feet and he couldn't pay for the course. So I said, I want to give you EFT 1 and 2 because you're good. I could see him working in his duels and with people, his dyads. He was sensitive. He's a born therapist after basketball. And so he says, I want to take it to the Black community. And I said, excellent. And I will do that in my way, is in every course that I give scholarships. And then I said, as well, he calls me mom. I'm his mom. And so we're always connecting. He did EFT 1, EFT 2, and he's using it with Black communities because we have the Black Lives Matter in Brazil as well. It's very subtle, but it's there.
Yeah.
So it was my form of activism.
Yeah.
To spread it on. So wherever you see an opening that you can help, food pantries, anything that you feel that, and that's what I like about Jane Goodall, because she says there's a lot of people doing incredible things we don't hear about.
Yeah, we don't.
And if we can find who these people are, connect with these people, we can't lose hope.
Do you mind? I know we're close to time, so just let me know. I have a couple of audience questions, but if you're running short on time, let me know.
Okay. No, I'm at your disposal. You can.
Great. I went to Career Safari's audience to ask a few questions that they would, see if they had a few questions for someone with your background, and I got some interesting questions back. One was, how do you recharge, you as a healer yourself? What boundaries are most important for you in your work?
Okay. I recharge meditating. Okay. Sometimes I'm able to do Qigong. Sometimes yoga. Right now, with having moved and I'm still settling in, I have to go back to my Qigong and my yoga, right? But I meditate. I do a lot of different techniques, magnified healing, just silence, right? Walking. I bought myself a treadmill here to make sure that I do the work, right, of exercising the body, because the body needs to exercise. And I do my own tapping. Okay. When I was in Brazil, my sister would give me the flower essences and I would take them. But I have 2 clients right now, and this is very important, that when you go into this field, sometimes you make the mistake of booking too many clients one after another. And what happens is you don't have a chance to recharge. So sometimes it's very important that you give a space between one session and another for you to drink plenty of water, maybe go outside, put your feet on the ground, look at nature. Another thing that really helps me recharge, and I've noticed this a lot. I should have gotten it in my drawer. I stop, and this is with Dr. Rick Hansen, and I look at things that are beautiful. And it's for neuroplasticity of the brain, because our brain is like Velcro for the bad, because we had to survive from the ice ages.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like Teflon for everything that's good and beautiful. It just passes us by. It just runs off. So in a sense, you have to counterbalance by looking around at a flower. Right here, one of my greatest Teflons that I am recharging myself is I open the blinds in the morning and I look out. The back looking at me are all these deer.
Oh.
So I spend some time looking at them, and sometimes one or two are looking at me. And I just look. And I just recharge by saying, oh, thank you, to wake up and look at these deer. Then I have another thing I love, that is of the Dalai Lama, about a precious human life. And I read it sometimes in the morning to try to remember, listen, I'm 69. You are more there for the next journey than here.
Oh, true.
So you have to be very grateful. So at night, I open my journal and I just allow myself very transparently, very honestly, put down some of the things I'm grateful for. Today, you will be one of my gratitude lists.
Oh,
we have, be grateful for what we have. We are so lucky in many ways.
There's some healing happening in this time with you. I'm just going to tell you that now. Do you have any advice for overcoming trauma without reliving it?
Yeah. So for overcoming trauma, if you just talk about it over and over again, it gets stronger.
Oof.
Okay.
You're feeding it.
You're feeding it. And for overcoming trauma, there is a window that you do not want to pass in any technique, because then you are going to re-traumatize. So within this window where you don't want to pass it, when I'm tapping and the person starts closing their eyes, I tell them, open your eyes and be with me. What color is my shirt? What do you see around the room? Take a deep breath, and when you're ready, we can continue. Trauma is something that you address slowly. And you can overcome it. You cannot resist it. You cannot hide it. It's there. But you have to go in segments and, slowly. If you can do it with a technique that you can make sure that you're releasing as well in the body, and you're addressing it slowly, not all at once. You don't have to chew the whole thing, because trauma, we all have trauma.
Yeah.
And what's very important to understand is there's the capital T trauma and the little t trauma. And what I always feel, and Dr. Edith Eger, the one from the Holocaust, said her trauma is horrendous. I read the book and I just couldn't imagine it. And yet people say, how can you work with so-and-so who has trauma because of her husband who did this or that, when you've been through so much, don't judge.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's trauma is real, valid, but can be worked on. But you do it slowly. If you never work on it alone, if it's big, you don't just go to a DVD and think you can handle it. No, if you need help, find somebody, and not every therapist is the right match.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with you. You will find one that is your right match. But the sooner you can address it, you're not going to be a prisoner of that trauma.
So there's a difference then, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's a difference between addressing it versus reliving it.
Yes.
Okay.
You address it in a safe manner. And Edith Egger wrote something that I thought was so interesting. For so long, I mean, she was 47 and her children did not know what she went through.
Wow. Wow.
She never told anyone, but they could feel that the mother had something.
Mm-hmm.
One day, one of the daughters brought a book home about Auschwitz. Mom, look. And she was triggered. She ran to the bathroom. She couldn't come out. So they could feel this mom of ours has something there hidden. And children pick it up.
For sure.
And and if transgenerational things exist, which we do know that it can be 2-3 generations where you can feel the plight that your parents went through. So if you can clear, that's fine. That's for everyone that comes after you. So at the Sinai Hospital, they did that experiment with mice. And they would put the cherry blossom and then give a shock. And so these mice were traumatized. Yeah. You've heard of this one, right?
No, please.
No. And then they this was while they were still young. Then they allowed them to procreate when they got older. The offspring would smell the cherry blossom and go into shock. And then the third generation as well. But then something very good happened. They would give the cherry blossom and then they would give a treat. I know this is cruel for animals, but it did prove that no matter what you went through, you can heal. You don't lose the memory. The memory will be there for the rest of your life. But it doesn't have to continue making you suffer. The pain of remembering the suffering becomes optional.
Suffering becomes optional.
You have pain. Yeah, if you go into it, there's pain. Yeah, that was bad. But to continue suffering, that can be optional because you start clearing it, releasing it.
Yeah.
So that you can go forward.
Yeah. My therapist says it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
But at least you'll know how to your point, address it and handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it won't impede you from living your life.
Yeah.
That's what you really want. This is a precious life.
That is what you really want, freedom.
Yeah. And so it's you're taking your brain out, or what you happened to you, you're taking yourself out of the prison.
Oh, here's my last question. I think actually Jane answered this one. It was, does a healer need time themselves to heal after a session? The answer is yes. This has been I don't even think I said much because he said so many good things. Like I said, I think someone or some people or a lot of people are going to be healed by this. If people want to get in touch with you and they want to learn more about your work, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
They can reach out to me. You can give them my email. Okay. They can go to Facebook, even though I'm not using Facebook a lot, but my name there is Susan De Toledo Hulley.
And I'll provide all of that in her Career Safari blog post. But Susan, what would be your final message to women out there about their career journeys?
Trust. I think the key word is trust. There are times that things look bleak.
Yeah.
And you may lose hope. Find something to hold on to. For example, this even makes me emotional. And Viktor Frankl's meaning of the meaning of this man's search for meaning. Okay. He was about to publish a manuscript he was writing when they took him to the concentration camp. He's a psychiatrist. And while he was there, I mean, it looked bleak. You're seeing people die left and right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It makes no sense. It's a mad world. So he said it wasn't the optimists or the pessimists that survived. He says it was someone who found still some meaning. So little scraps of paper, he would continue editing and writing new thoughts for his manuscript. And whenever he could find something to write, he said, that is going to give me a reason to get out of here alive.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say hope, find meaning, trust yourself. Because there's a whole lot of people out there who are going to say that you can't do it, you're not good enough. But trust yourself, because listen, I started so many times from scratch. People could have told me, listen, yeah, who do you think you are? But I said, I have a desire. I have love for people. And I think that I just want to understand this world. I want to understand what this is all about.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I go into a lot of the meditation. I've always searched. And I think we're here for something bigger. The human race can't be here just to destroy each other.
No. And truly at the core of us ourselves, we don't want to.
No. And I think women now have more power than ever before.
For sure. For sure.
And together, we can make things happen.
Oh, well, that is our torchbearer for the month, Susan De Toledo Hulley. Susan, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your story with us.
And I thank you so much for inviting me. I mean, you found out from other people, but who am I? I'm kind of hidden, Thank you.
Oh, these are the stories that I love to share. If you want to hear more about her career journey, or you want to read more about other torchbearers we featured, visit us at www.thecareersafari.com and join our torch community. Follow us on social media. You can watch the full episodes of our interviews on YouTube. And until then, continue to pass the torch. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.